Hi, welcome back to another episode of Nobody's Doing It Right, the podcast for those who are uncertain. My name is Kat, I am your host. For today's episode, we're going to talk about how you have to accept before you can redirect. Meaning you have to accept your circumstances as they are right now before you can actually change them. And acceptance is maybe one of the most important things we can do as people in our lives, and also one of the hardest things to do. And I think that's because to accept things is often seen as us giving up. It's often seen as us becoming complacent with our circumstances. And when I say accept, I don't mean that we should, be happy about our circumstances, that we have to force ourselves to have this toxic positivity or to spiritually bypass what we're going through and try and make ourselves believe that it's not that bad or it's not bad. Accept that it sucks. Accept that it's awful. Like, the point is just to accept it as the truth for right now in your life. But that truth, even though that's the truth right now, does not mean it's going to be the truth forever. And I think that's the place where many of us get stuck is in feeling like because we're accepting it now, it means then we have to accept it forever. And that's not what it is. I think that's the feeling of being kind of subsumed by being pulled under. That's the thing that's making us get stuck and not letting us actually accept things so that we then can redirect and can change. Sorry, my chair is a little squeaky today. But the acceptance part is a huge component to this entire process. If you cannot accept what's happening right now, if you can't see things clearly for what they are, accept that this is where you are, this is what the circumstances are, whatever your situation is, you can't then take a step forward in order to change it in a different direction. The step you take, the stone you step on, has to be substantial. It has to have a good foundation, a strong foundation to carry you to the next step and the next step after that. But when we base our decisions and our changes and our redirections on a fantasy, maybe not the truth, maybe denial, when we base it on denial, it's not a solid foundation for us to take an actual step on. It will collapse, right? It won't hold our weight because it's not rooted in truth and honesty in ourselves. Acceptance is the kindest thing you can do for yourself. It is the most loving thing you can do for yourself, the most honest thing you can do for yourself, the most respectful thing you can do for yourself. It's not a bad thing to accept your circumstances. Again, I think the fear in acceptance is saying, well, if I'm going to accept my circumstances as they are, that means then I'm happy with them. That means that I want them to persist. And it's the complete opposite, right? Because the saying goes, what you resist persists. What you resist to accept about your life right now is what's going to continue. You're giving this thing so much energy, right? You're trying so hard to keep it away, to keep it at bay. All this energy is going towards this thing, regardless of in what way you're giving that energy, right? Yes, you're trying to resist it. You're trying to keep it away from you. You're trying to hold it back, but you're still giving it too much energy. You're giving it the energy that you should and could be giving to what you actually want, so you can actually focus on what you want rather than what you don't want. Because if you focus on what you don't want, you're going to find a million different ideas and strategies on how to get to that thing, because that's what's in your field of vision, right? It's what you don't want. What you resist persists because you will always be giving energy to that thing, which will be giving energy back to you in that same way. Acceptance can also feel a bit naive. There's some naivety to the thought of accepting things, as though acceptance will do anything. Like, I think many of us feel like, what's the point of accepting? It's not going to change anything. Ironically, it does change things. To accept that things might not ever change is exactly what you need to do in order to change them. It's allowing yourself to release some of that pressure and lower the stakes of what you're trying to do. When you have the stakes really, really high, you have a whole lot of pressure on yourself to resist this current circumstance. You're not allowing space for you to recognize what might be more aligned and to take the opportunities as they come. Because I think we're given opportunities in, ways that are unconventional at times, in ways that we wouldn't think we're getting opportunities to change or just redirect ourselves. It doesn't have to be even like a full change of things, just a redirection. I think we are presented with those opportunities, but it's hard for us to see them when we are still in this space of not wanting to accept our circumstances. And what I've learned from my own experience, of course, anytime I've allowed myself to accept where I'm at, I've actually realized that there's a lot here in this place, the thing that I might not actually want. Maybe the circumstance is just, it's not right for me. I don't want it to happen. I don't want to be in it. When I accept it, I'm telling myself that I don't have to identify with this. It can just be a thing that's happening. It does not mean anything about me. It does not mean anything about my worth, about my value. I am not this thing. It is just a thing that's happening. But the more you resist it, I think the more fuel your ego is given to try and identify with your circumstances, with your external circumstances. You're not your external circumstances. You are not the things that are happening to you or around you. You can be separate from those things. And I think acceptance really helps with that process as well. And for me, anytime I've accepted my circumstances, I've also realized that there are some lessons here that I didn't realize I was receiving. There are things in this present circumstance, the one that I really don't want to be in. There are things here that actually I need to experience. There maybe is a reason why I am stuck in this circumstance right now. Maybe I'm not seeing something. Even in my past experience, when I've realized what that thing is that I wasn't properly seeing, it makes it so much easier to allow yourself to be in the present moment and not try to remove yourself from it. Because at the end of the day, like your present moment is the only thing that's true. This is it. This is your life. And yeah, it might not be ideal right now, but this is the one life you have to live. And so I think when we allow ourselves to accept things, we also allow ourselves to indulge in the present moment and find the small bits of pleasure that we can find. So for me, I try my best. Now, obviously, I'm not perfect at this, and this isn't easy to do by any means. And it doesn't mean that every bad circumstance always has like a lesson. No, there's no like true or untrue thing about this. There's a lot of nuance to this, and everyone's experience is different, right? But for me, what I do when I notice myself resisting my current circumstances rather than accepting them, and it's difficult for me to move forward because of this resistance, I let myself accept things by asking, okay, maybe there's something here that I still need to see. Maybe that's why I'm stuck here. So what am I not seeing? What here is maybe actually very beneficial for me that I maybe have to hone a little bit more before I can take that step? But the only way to really see that is to accept that this is your circumstance right now, that this is the only truth you have right now. That's the only way to be able to see then, okay, what is a small glimmer of hope in this, if any? That's the only way to do that. And then when you get that, you can hold on to it, you can latch on to that small glimmer of hope and then use that to propel you forward into a new direction. This applies with any sort of change, I think, that you have in your life going on, right? If you want to change your financial circumstances, for example, and maybe you're trying really hard to resist and avoid accepting that maybe budgeting is something that you aren't good at. Maybe you were never taught to be good at it growing up. Maybe you were never taught to be comfortable with money in that way. Maybe that's something you have to accept about yourself and really, relent to that. Of course, there's many reasons why financial uncertainty happens and financial instability happens, right? I'm just giving that as an example. It can also apply to fitness. If you feel like you are not in the place where you want to be fitness-wise, you have to accept that this is your circumstance right now. You are somebody who does not work out in the way you want to be. You are somebody who doesn't, take the initiative to start a routine or whatever. You have to accept that. And I think another reason why we have a hard time accepting those things is because we are basically telling our ego that it is wrong, that we are not good. We're not good enough. And that tricky part there is what makes it so difficult to then accept and move forward, right? Because yes, you are telling yourself, hey, you're not showing up for yourself in the way that I want us to show up for ourselves, right? We're not showing up properly for ourselves. That is not telling yourself you're unworthy and not good enough. It's holding yourself accountable. Those two things are very different. Accountability is incredibly important. You can't take any action without accountability, without showing yourself that you are willing to be held accountable by yourself even, in order to do the things that you know are best for you. But I think our minds and our egos can sometimes conflate accountability with self-hatred, and it's not the same thing. With insecurity, with hate, like berating ourselves, being mean to ourselves, it's not the same thing. And I think once we get comfortable holding ourselves accountable when necessary, that's when we're able to accept our circumstances, and then take those appropriate steps forward to redirect, to get onto a path that maybe feels more aligned with us. Of course, nothing can be perfect. It's not like you are going to immediately change everything in your life and get to this idealized place. Life is not a fantasy, right? Life is real. Life has difficulties. Life has road bumps. There's so many things that happen. I'm just talking about situations that you want to just shift in. You want to shift a little bit and you find yourself stuck. I'm not talking about you changing completely everything about yourself and having this immense glow up and your whole life is different. Like, no, you will carry parts of yourself with you forever. But there are parts of you that you can also let go of and allow yourself to step into a new part, a new version of yourself at times. And I think that's okay. And I think that's part of the process of life. So I hope this was helpful. I hope it was informative. If you want to read about these topics, I write about them over on my Substack. I also have one-to-one calls if you want to talk about these things with me specifically. Obviously, I'm not a therapist. I say that all the time. And yeah, I also post the rest of my content over on my social media accounts. So feel free to follow me over there. Other than that, thank you for listening, and I'll be back again soon with another episode.